Hello everyone, welcome. It's good to see you all again. 2 weeks, a long time. Do say hello in the comments and let's see who we've got in today. So let's have a look at you here. Who we got in there? I can see a few of you were chatting. Hello Adam, hello Aditya, hello Catboy, hello Miss Brennan, how are you? I haven't talked to you much today at all, have I? So who else have we got? Anyone else in? Great to see you all. I'm glad you've been queuing up and waiting for this, which is great. Well, we should just get on. Emily, hi, how are you? Anyone else want to say hello? Because it's always nice to see who's there. Good. All right. Well, we can crack on and get on with today's live stream. So let's go through and have a look at what we're going to be doing today. We've got a language fact as ever. We're going to go on to your brilliant photos. You have taken some amazing pictures this week. I feel bad because I haven't commented on them. I've looked at them all, but I haven't heaped praise on you. But hi Daisy, how are you? The quality of your pictures is just really, really good. I'll be interested to know because I have bought a new piece of kit this week, which I'm sporting here. Let me show this to you. It's very exciting. If you're me. It's a new microphone because my last one was being a little bit annoying. So if the sound is better today than it was last week, just let me know in the comments because it would be nice to justify this new microphone that I bought. Anyway, your brilliant photos. What else can we say? We've got Masterpiece. We're looking at some great photos today by Elliot Erwitt that I think you'll like. He's one of my favourite photographers. Mainly because he photographs dogs, and I like dogs. Then we've got some quizzing, a bit of technique on shutter speed. I have made a video which I hope will really explain to you how a shutter works, but we'll see. A bit more quizzing, and then we're going to talk about patterns, which is a change to the advertised programme, because patterns are something I hadn't included, and I thought they should be in there. So patterns is going to be the assignment this week, but we'll get to that in a bit. So without any further ado, I want to introduce you to something that is maybe slightly weird and complex, but actually, if you like, it sits back at the very history of photography, and it's called the camera obscura, what you might know as a pinhole camera. You can pick up these pinhole camera kits for 10, 20, 30 quid. Hi, Katie. And this is how they work. So if you imagine, right, staring at that picture I've got down there, the black picture, you can a pinhole camera exactly. You can see that the rectangle. That's like supposed to be a wall and a ceiling. So you've got an object that's being projected onto one wall, and then you've got a tiny little hole in the other wall. Now here's the strange thing. This means that projection, when it lands on the wall on the other side of the hole, it actually gets flipped upside down, and it gets inverted. So inverted is flipped up down. It gets reversed and inverted. So photography really is exactly that, except putting a lens in that hole in the wall rather than it just being a hole. So if you ever get a chance to play with the pinhole camera, it's a lot of fun. Did you learn that with Miss Block last year? Oh, well, that's really good. So, but it's like all of these things. You can pick up one of these kits, find something nice, and try and use it with the pinhole camera, and it's just one of those crazy things, and of course it's what sits behind all of photography. This apparently goes all the way back to before the Greeks. This is something that they discovered, and there are some views that some of the amazing paintings that were done were actually in this way, that the image was sort of projected, if you like, using the camera obscura. So. And by the way, camera obscura means dark chamber. So there we go, that's what it means. That's the language fact. But really interesting. There's a question which relates to that later on. We'll see if you remember it. Today's going to be quite technical, but I hope that you find it interesting. Your brilliant photos. You have taken some great photos. I love this. We did the macro photography part last week, and Emily really did well with this. I think this is a great shot. This is no doubt in a back garden or somewhere not in the middle of the Amazonian rainforest, but it's really we feel as though we are in head-high grass. Unless you were in head-high grass, Emily, in which case it's a good photo anyway, but I imagine that this is taken in more like a back garden or a park. I thought that was very, very impressive. Next up, we've got Aditya with the aquamarine pebble. Easy for me to say. Although this is slightly blurry, and Aditya was blaming his phone, I noticed in the comments, although you did take one that wasn't blurry later on, I think this is a cracking shot. I think that you've placed it dead centre and it works really well. I think it's a gorgeous object as well, but also you've got it sat on that piece of wood. I think it looks really, really nice. What a great shot. This I love. Now, Adam has not been afraid to turn the colour up to serious levels here. We've got some a seriously saturated image. However, when you look at the sky and you look at the backdrop of Stonehenge, it is simply astonishing. What a lovely picture. And Adam's gone for, I guess, a 16:9 there. Maybe it's even slightly wider, but it works incredibly well. It's a 5-year-old phone with a weak lens. Right, I take back everything I said. Any abuse I gave you about your photo. It was a great picture, and that's why we included it. It was really, really good. So there we go, Adam. Great shot of Stonehenge. We've got Sharjeev. Again, colours have been really vibrant this week, and that water's coming out almost blue. But I think it's gorgeous. What I like is that you've got the diagonal running from bottom right out into the middle of the frame, and you've also got diagonal coming out of the bottom left. That sort of long blade of grass. It's just a really well constructed image, and the colours I think work really well. It is pretty vibrant though. Same thing again. Sharjeev is a little bit the star of the show this week because you took a lot of pictures this week, Sharjeev, but we'll be enjoying all of them. This, I think, the sunset, that is again very, very vibrant. Maybe dial it down a little bit from that, but I think that the layers you've got there work really, really well. What a good shot. Same for here. Another sunset. Nature is amazing. Who can argue with that? What a cracking shot that is. Wonderful colours. I just think it always helps when you're shooting sunsets or when you're shooting something in the distance to have something in the foreground just to give it a sense of context and perspective. Otherwise, it doesn't quite work. I always take you back to that picture I showed you that I took at Seven Sisters when all the right ingredients were there, apart from the fact it wasn't a composed photograph. Sharjeev, I love the photos you take of flowers, and I think this is gorgeous. The way you've captured the water on the rose is brilliant, but I think this also highlights one of the problems that you have when you actually get close up to things, and that is the limited depth of field. So if you look at any photo, and the thing is, once you start doing this, it becomes a bit obsessive. Which part of that photograph is in perfect focus? Because only one part of any image is in sharp focus. And the rest of it, either it's blurred or it's an acceptable level of blur, which means you can make out what it is. If we look at the background, that's a nice bouquet. It's all blurred beautifully. And then the raindrops, the sad thing is when you get this close, the raindrops weren't pin sharp. And the problem is you lose depth of field when you get really close up to things. But that's just one of the quirks of a lens, really. That's the quirk of the optics that you're using. I like this one too. I'd maybe put a bit of contrast in there and dial down the exposure slightly, but I think it's a lovely, lovely composition. Great colours. The petals seem so delicate. And again, we have more. I think the colours are what stood out here. I love the colours of these. And it somehow seems to be dangling, which works really well. And I like the fact you've got that tree trunk on the left-hand side there. I think that works incredibly well. We have Erin, I assume this is brother of, who is pensively staring out into the Amazonian rainforest, or probably somewhere in Crawley. I think I can see some buildings in the background, so it probably is Crawley. But what a great shot that is. Looks absolutely staggering. And I wonder, something to think about when you're taking photos like this is the height at which you take it. We all naturally just take a picture standing at the height that we are. Always experiment with getting down on your knees, crawling around on the floor, or trying to get up high without falling off things. And it can really change the perspective hugely. But I think that's a great shot, Erin. Well done. Now, Adam, I love this. A, the fact you recognised the hungry caterpillars on the leaf, and they have been tucking in there, haven't they? And B, the fact that it's really sharp. And I think taking this with a phone is a heck of an achievement. So well done. I think it's a really, really good shot, Adam. I love the translucent nature of the leaf. You've got the diagonal as well. Everything coming together. And the background, it's so hard. But when you're taking a photo, look at that background and think, will it distract? Because all too often you take an image and then you look at the background and there's something you've left in there that you haven't seen, and it just ruins the entire picture. But not in this case. A great effort. I love this, and this does remind me of Normandy, especially that building. But again, Erin's been very clever here, and she's got something in the foreground, so it gives us that sense of perspective, and some lovely wheat or grass or whatever it is growing in the background there. I obviously don't have favourites, I'm a teacher, but this is my favourite picture this week. I just think wood wood is such a great thing to photograph. And sometimes, if you ever go out on the beach or you go wandering and you find, I'm always keeping an eye out for a bit of driftwood that I can use as a backdrop for any of my images. I'm lucky because I'm working on a beautiful wooden desk, and I try, if I'm taking product photographs, to do it on this desk, because wood is such a it's somehow such a natural product, and it's got that strength about it with that grain. And I think this is absolutely lovely. It also works really well that the handle, the nearest handle there, is the one that's in sharp focus, and then you've got the grain of the wood drifting away. I think that's a really strong photograph. Well done, Lizette. I think that's outstanding. I like this too, Erin. This is Bath. You've got a few of Bath, and I like this one because, again, you've got something beautiful in the foreground. Annoyingly, it's a hazy day. I live by the seaside, and if you're using a professional camera, you can buy filters, a polarizing filter it's called, which can actually get rid of this haze. But when you're around the sea on certain days, you get this really great, this haze, which makes the photographs look a bit, well, just a bit sort of foggy. But that's haze for you. Polarizing filter's the answer. I love this one, Catherine. I love the fact you tried to get inside this rose. The difficulty is, of course, you start to lose light once you go inside something, and then your depth of field starts to vanish. But I think the layers you've got there turn this into a piece of abstract art. I think it's a really good photograph. Well done. I like that one too. This one I love, Erin. The frame inside a frame. I'm a sucker for a frame inside a frame. And then also, what's clever is you've got a kind of frame inside a frame inside a frame with that fencing in the background. I think that's a lovely shot. Aditya with this is such a crisp photograph, Aditya. It is so sharp. You've really caught the raindrops on the grass there. It's a super sharp photograph. And what's impressive is that you've really brought out the sort of slimy nature of slugs. My skin always crawls slightly when I see slugs, because I don't like touching them very much. Yeah, in fact, it's interesting. Even the dogs don't like going near slugs. That's where we are on slugs. Shajiv, I love this. You've gone for colour dialing up again. Lots of vibrancy. You've turned up that saturation. But I think it looks really well. And what works here again, Shajiv, is this idea. You've got the railings, and it's moving across in a diagonal, and it's kind of almost slightly golden section there. I love that. Great shot. This one, wow. That is colourful. Some might argue this is too much, but not me, because I love vibrant colours, and I think that is a brilliant, brilliant shot. All right, some more from Shajiv. Shajiv has been putting in a lot of pictures this week, and again, I like the layers in this image, the diagonals and the layers. The difficulty is when you've got so much of one colour in an image, and then somehow I then experiment and maybe try putting things in black and white or grayscale or sepia, and have sort of muck around with the filters, and you get something that perhaps hasn't got so much green in it. Sam, I loved this photo, and it's a music box, and I was trying to work out what it was. It's a music box, but what I like about this, and unfortunately it's not quite big enough for you guys to see, but if you look, if you work your way from the bottom of the ribbon and sort of go upwards, you can see that the number, and I think it's a 3, is actually showing through one of those holes. That's a detail that I really, really liked about this. I think it's gorgeous. I think you've got the wood beautifully there. I think that you've got the eye being led down the page, and there's interest all over it. I think it's a really, really beautifully constructed image. What a shock! What a great image that was. Aditya, I love this. I love the way that you again, forget 16:9. This is 32:6 or something. This is a crazy aspect ratio, but I think it really works for your subject, and I think you've really brought it through as well. But notice the limitations of optics, of lenses, that the depth of field is so narrow once you start getting close up to something, and no doubt that was blowing around in the wind as well. Incidentally, is it as madly windy with you in Crawley as it is in Brighton? Because we are wondering if we're going to become part of the Pixar film Up at any point, because it is absolutely nuts here. The wind is really, really strong. Okay, we've got Erin again. I like this, and I like the fact that we can see your shadow. I like the different layers. I like the different textures that you've got on the road, and I like the clouds. I think it all works really well. Multi-layered image. It's cracking. What a great shot that is. Erin, you've got this caterpillar in some fennel. I was thinking about how that really is a first world problem for caterpillars getting lost in fennel. But the fennel, it's a very delicate sort of herb, and I think that works really well with this image, as well as the striking colours of the caterpillar. It's a really, really good shot. A field of wheat from Sam. I love this, and wheat is out now. Good time to go and photograph fields of wheat if you get a chance. There's all sorts of things growing up, and it's amazing how quickly they go from nothing to being 3 or 4 feet high. Also, something that you can capture, we're talking about patterns later on, is this idea of the repeated patterns of wheat. And often there are tracks that are cut in, and sometimes you can actually capture it if you do a fast enough shutter speed waving in the wind. So something to think about there. I like this. I was a sucker for this, and again, I think it's a great shot, but this suffers from the problem of when you get too close. Remember I showed you how to lock off exposure and focus last week? Well, I think this has worked really well. Better had, because I was trying to work out what is in sharp focus in this picture, and I was wondering what I wanted in sharp focus in this picture, and maybe it should be the key, or maybe it should be the place of the key, or the lock itself. But I think it's a really good shot, really well composed. Rachel, I thought this was a brilliant photograph. The fact you've captured the moth so sharply, and that the moth is on a window. Initially I thought it was a spider's web, it's a window. And you've also got the detail on the window as well, and that lovely blur behind it. What a brilliant shot, works incredibly well. And the snail. I like the fact you've captured the glistening of the shell, the pattern of the shell repeating. I keep saying pattern, which is a sneaky way of me leading on to what we're going to be talking about later. I love the fact you've caught the raindrop on the leaf. A really, really good photo. So we'll move on to the next part. We have done the your amazing photos. The important thing is make sure that you keep these amazing pictures coming in, because they're always fabulous to see. And something that I have noticed is that your images have been getting better over time. You've been taking more time, and you've been thinking more about your composition. Okay, so let's go on to the next phase of today's live stream.
Masterpiece.
Good, just an excuse to press my masterpiece button. So we're going to look at a famous photographer and the fact file. The famous photographer this week is Elliot Erwitt, someone that you may not have heard of, but I think that when you see some of the pictures, his photographs rather, you will go, oh, no, I've seen this guy's photos. He's got a great sense of humour. So born in France, moved to the States when he was quite young, and he was 10. He worked with some legendary photographers, I would say especially Robert Capa. Robert Capa is... I've got a creepy echo. Have I got a creepy echo? Ooh, okay. What can I do about a creepy echo? Ooh, I don't know. If I move my microphone slightly further away, does that help at all? Did the echo, just out of interest, did the echo just start, or has that been going all the way through? Have you had me being creepy for the last 18 minutes? I don't know. I've moved it slightly further away. Okay, so he invited, it sounds like I've got 2 mics on. Does it now? Okay, hang on a second. Let me see if I can play around with this. Does that... Oh, I think I figured it out. Does that get rid of the echo entirely? Can I ask you, does that get rid of the echo entirely? Yeah, okay, cool. All right, good. Let me know. I'm using a bit of software which it's horrifically complicated, but I could see two sound bars bouncing up the page. Good. Okay, thanks guys. Just let me know, because I figured that one out fairly quickly. Yeah, there was a second mic working into it. Who said that point? That's really good. Okay. Sounds like you've got 2 mics on. Yeah, I did have 2 mics on. All right, so Elliot Erwitt, photographs dogs, thought-provoking images. You'll see what I mean. I'm not going to talk through one of his images in detail today, because actually the images speak for themselves and I only get in the way. And he was also had an interest, as many of these photographers did, in photographing the underdog. That was something that he liked to do. Right, enough yabbering. So I like this because it's something that we have at some point in our life done, which is press our faces against some glass. And I think it's just there's a lot of humour in this image, but there's somehow depth to this image too. I think it's really, really clever. I love the framing. I love the... yeah, I know you couldn't hear me last time. Now you can hear me twice. Yeah, I figured that one out. I also discovered, do you remember the cat? When I put the cat up on the cat meme, it was playing all sorts of music. I didn't realise there was music attached to it. There was this techno music, which I figured out afterwards. So, yeah, we live and learn. We live and learn. So, yeah, I think this is a great image. Great sense of humour there. I like this because it's kind of, if you like, cataloguing the history of the States and the fact that they turned to the motor car. And before the motor car, the steam train was much bigger. There were still people, when I was a kid, people were obsessive about steam trains. I never understood it. I never had any interest at all in steam trains. My dad was a steam train nut. We would go and look at steam trains and I'd be there thinking, it's a train. This is boring. It's powered by steam and it's smelly. Can we go? But I think this image is really clever, apart from the fact that it's you've got these massive skies that you get in America, and the fact that it's just been constructed so well. I love the fact that this is this just shows about how America changed over time. Okay, so now we come to the comedy pictures of the dogs. Can anyone tell me, I'm hoping you can't see, you know in the bottom left there's a camera. Where have I talked about that camera before? Who have I mentioned before who used that camera? Not that I'm obsessed about kit, but this camera changed the way that people photographed, in the same way that around about the 1940s and 1950s, they brought out a new, the French dude. It is the French dude. Anyone remember what make of camera that was? It used to be the most famous make of camera at the time. My dad had one of these. This was, it was very expensive, and it could do something that it allowed you to photograph in a way that you couldn't photograph before. I was talking about new wave films like Jean-Luc Godard and Francois Truffaut, who were able to carry around this portable film camera and shoot films off the cuff. So you didn't need to have a big budget, or you didn't need to have Hollywood sets to make films. Box Brownie, good guess. Box Brownie, it was after that actually. This is the Leica. And it was Henri Cartier-Bresson who used the... well done. It was Henri Cartier-Bresson. That was him, Adam. I need to look down at my left-hand side because I get the I get your comments about 10 seconds after you make them. But it was Cartier-Bresson. And this camera, can you think back to when we looked at Ansel Adams, and he had these huge medium format cameras that were, they had to be... They almost needed two people to carry them. So this portable camera that could take high quality photos made a whole new type of photography possible, the sort of candid photography. And this is an example of the candid photography, that these weren't set up. These were just him carrying his camera and seeing these scenes and shooting them. So I thought they were great. So this falls into the social commentary sort of category. I think this is a really, really powerful image. If I was a history teacher or an English teacher, I would send my class away and say, write me 100 words on what this means to you, and see what you got back. And you'd get back 20 different answers. But I think it's quite a strong image, isn't it? Is it how commercialism is replacing religion? I don't know. But interesting. I like it a lot. I'm going to tell you a very brief, funny story. You see on top of the cross, it's got INRI, which stands for Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. I was in a school quiz when I was 12, sat in front of the whole school. We were all doing quizzing, and I was on the quiz team. And the question was, what does INRI stand for? And I said, Royal National Lifeboat Institute. Some teachers never let me forget that. Right, social commentary. And this is, how pertinent is this image today? We've got the Black Lives Matter movement and people arguing and bickering about what it means, when actually it's really quite clear what it means. And of course, this is America's really recent history, and that's what is quite scary. It wasn't like this was hundreds of years ago. This was relatively recent. So yeah. And then we come to my favourite picture. I'm guessing, let me know in the comments, how many of you have seen this picture before? I think it's become his most well-known picture. It's the one where he's got the little, I don't know what that is. Is that a chihuahua? It's not a chihuahua. I don't know what it is actually. A little tiny dog. And then you've got a woman wearing a pair of leather boots, and then you've got the 2 legs of a Great Dane. And it's just great. And you know, I was talking about him liking the underdog. I know, literally underdog. Ha, how funny. But it is the angle at which he's taken this image is really clever. And there's a whole host of photos that he's taken about dogs that kind of echo this idea of thinking about it from the small guy's point of view, which I think is quite interesting. Okay, all right, it is quiz time. So I suggest that we get on with this. Miss Brennan, can you try and keep a track of things?
Quiz time. Quiz time. Quiz time. Quiz time.
Right, here we go. Quiz time. So I shall put the first question on the screen. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can go to here. Oh, that's better. There we go. So you've got a much better view of that now. So I shall go to the next one, and we shall see what question 1 is. Answers in the comments, please. What does a lens fail to focus? What does a lens fail to focus correctly when chromatic aberration takes place? What does a lens fail to focus correctly when chromatic aberration almost takes place? I am looking at the comments. Hopefully you managed to see that question. I am looking at the comments to see what you have got there. I'll put on the countdown timer just to add extra stress. Oh, which you can't see because it's behind my head. I'm currently being crushed by a massive arm. Yeah, lots of big scary words. No, it's not focused. I'm going to turn that countdown off because that's quite an annoying noise, actually. No, it's not focus. Chromatic aberration. Can you remember that there was a picture of a branch, and there was something strange around the outside of it? It wasn't so much. It wasn't the focus. Yes, Adam gets the points. It was colour. Well spotted, Adam. Good effort. And you beat Gabe to it, which is always good news. So it was colour. So chromatic aberration, and it's a way of impressing people at a dinner party later on in life, is to say, "Oh no, great shot, but suffer slightly from chromatic aberration." So there you go. Here is the next one for you. Who is this? Answers in the comments, please. Who is this? Yeah, okay, you know, that was good work, though. Who is that we were looking at carrying a medium format camera, photographing landscapes? The bloke who I mention every single week. That dude doesn't carry any marks at all. No, not Bresson, not Mr. Glyn Thomas, he had more hair than me. Jeff Goldblum. No, not Jeff Goldblum. There were no dinosaurs anywhere or aliens. It wasn't Jeff Goldblum. It wasn't Jeff Goldblum. It doesn't look anything like Jeff Goldblum. God, dear me. Unbelievable. So, okay, I'll try again next. Ansel Adams! Yay! Finally, Ansel Adams. That is astonishing. Okay, that's quite enough of that. Right, so let's go on to the next question, which is here. It was Ansel Adams. Woo, well done. Adam is absolutely nailing this week. So next question. Who shot this image? Who shot this image? Answers in the comments, please. Oh, we have a correct answer. Let's just get rid of that. We have the correct answer, and it was Gabe who said Cartier. It was Cartier. It was Henri Cartier-Bresson, actually. But Cartier will get you this. This was widely regarded as being one of his most famous shots. When you think about Golden Section, it's almost represented in its entirety in this image. So the sort of photographic rules were... He kind of helped write some of these photographic rules that we've been studying. Again, I love his photos, but I know I go on about it a lot. I've done this every single way now. We describe light as having direction, quality, and... What is the missing ingredient? Direction, quality, and colour. It is Gabe who has got in there and done that absolutely correctly. Direction, quality and colour. A choir has even come to sing for you especially. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so next question. I forget which question I'm up to, but I hope you're keeping count, Miss Brennan, because I'm certainly can't do that. Ooh, oh, that was the end of the quiz. That's why. That was good. So technique is the next thing that we're going to jump to seamlessly. We're going to jump to the technique part, and I can't even find the right button to press my technique. I thought I had a technique. Why don't I do have a jingle? Of course, in theory, if you're doing this, you should know which button to press when you're doing it. But you know, it's been a long day. A draw between Adam and Gabe. Ooh, a draw between Adam and Gabe. That's where we are. Do we know how many points they've got each, Miss Brennan? Is that something that you can tell us? A draw between Adam and Gabe is where we are. Right, shutter speed video. This is why I put this on there, to remind me of what I'm doing next. Right, you guys are all super bright, and I thought it might be worth you understanding what happens inside a camera when you take a photograph. I'm going to show you a video. Now, this video is 2-all. Okay, thank you. It was stressful. Good. We aim to make things stressful. I'm going to show you a video. It'll explain... I found some great footage on YouTube showing a shutter and showing an aperture and showing how the two work together. And I've kind of ripped this from YouTube. There was some awful music on it, which sounded like Poundland Edith Piaf. And I've got rid of that and replaced it with my own commentary. So see what you think. Let me know if you can't hear it, but I shall put this on for you right now. Here we go. The aim of this video is to teach you a bit about how a shutter works. If you understand how a shutter works, then it makes it a lot easier to actually make decisions on shutter speed itself. So for this to happen, I first of all want to run through all the text that you can see on the screen there to help you understand what it is that we're going to be looking at. Let's start by looking at the text on the top left. It says Nikon D3. Now Nikon D3 actually refers to the camera, and this is a Nikon D3. It's a single lens reflex camera. Then you've got the AF Nikkor 50mm f1.4D, quite a mouthful, and that's the lens. 50mm because from the glass at the top to the sensor it's 50mm. Note that this lens isn't a zoom lens, it's fixed at 50mm, also known as a prime lens. Now this lens is classed as a 1.4D, which means, look at the top left there, the aperture can open really wide. This is known as a fast lens. You pay more for these because you can shoot in lower light with these sorts of lenses. Let's now look at the 9 FPS. This refers to 9 frames a second. So that's how many exposures it will take in a second, 9, which is a very high number. We've then got 1/4000th, and that's 1/4000th of a second, which is how long the sensor will be exposed to light. For 1/4000th of a second. The next thing is f16, which is the aperture setting for this image, which as you can see means a very small sized opening, only letting in relatively little light, but giving you a really wide depth of field, so more of your image can be in acceptably sharp focus. Notice that only one element can be in perfect focus. Okay, so we've got at 5000 FPS, so this was shot, this video you're going to see, at 5000 frames a second. So think here about the slow-mo guys on YouTube who film things like melons exploding with elastic bands around them or explosions, and it allows you at that frame rate to slow things down to the point where you can see every detail. So let's look at the picture on the left-hand side now. This is staring down the barrel of a lens head-on. So we're looking at the lens like this, except we're focusing right in the center here at the aperture mechanism. So that's the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you're staring into the camera itself, and the part highlighted in blue there, that's the mirror that moves out of the way when the image is actually taken. So we've got aperture on the left and we've got shutter on the right. So let's now go through what happens. So you press the button, you press the shutter release button, and then look on the right-hand side and you'll see the mirror starts to move out of the way so the sensor can be exposed. Now look on the left-hand side and you'll see that the aperture mechanism sets itself to whatever it should go to, which is f16 in this case, that small hole allowing a sharp beam of light in, which gives you a wider depth of field. Now look at the right hand side and you can see the shutter curtains moving downwards. Let's pause it there. two curtains, a top one and a bottom one, and you'll notice there's a gap between the two curtains. Through that gap is the sensor. So in this instance, the two curtains are moving down, leaving a little gap between them, and they're wiping across the sensor. Why is that the case? Well, look at the length of the exposure. In this case, it is 1/4000th of a second, so it's a very short exposure, which means that not very much light is being let through, but typically you would do this for a fast-moving subject or on a very bright day. Just to fry your brain slightly more, and answers in the comments please, why would the bottom part of the picture, the last part to be swept, actually be the oldest part of the image? Answers in the comments please. Let's see if you can figure that one out. So there we go, and it continues its journey. And then at the end of the cycle, the mirror closes back down and the aperture mechanism resets. So I'll let the whole thing play through once again so you can see it all happening in one go. The mirror goes up, the aperture sets, the curtains move downwards, exposing the sensor to light, the aperture will reset itself, and the mirror goes back down. It's always helpful to know what that piece of kit in your hands actually does, because it can inform the sort of pictures that you take. And although this is a mechanical shutter we're looking at here, the shutter that you have on your phone is very, very similar. It's a digital shutter, but the principle is exactly the same. So there we are. I will never get back the hours that I spent making that, but I hope that helped you understand what's the mirror for. That's a really good question, Gabe. Right, so you know when you look into a professional camera, you're actually seeing what you're shooting. It's an optical viewfinder. If you looked into so when you look into the viewfinder, there's a mirror, first of all, that then, have you ever used one of those periscopes? It's the same principle. You know a periscope in a submarine, or you might have had a periscope when you were younger. You've got two mirrors. So when you look into the viewfinder of a professional camera, you're looking into a mirror, and that mirror directs you downwards to a second mirror, which then looks out through the lens. But that mirror is blocking the sensor. So in order to shoot it, you've actually got the mirror's got to move up, and then the sensor to be given some light, and then the mirror's got to move back down again. So when you take a photograph using an SLR, a single lens reflex camera, the mirror mechanism has got to move out of the way and then move back down. But when you actually take the shot, you can't see anything because the mirror's moved out of the way. These days, I've just bought a new camera actually, and it's a mirrorless camera, and things tend to be moving in that direction because the mirror cameras are very effective. You can get good frame rates with them, up to 9, 10, 12, 14 frames a second, which is what the paparazzi would have, or professional sports journalists would have, something that can shoot a lot of shots a second, a high rate per second. But the mirrorless camera opens up things again, so technology is kind of moving in that direction. All right, good. So I hope that was interesting. I showed it to my kids and they said, oh, I had absolutely no idea that's how a camera works. So that was that. Okay, we move on to the next part of...
Quiz time. Quiz time. Quiz time. Quiz time.
Yes, you are welcome, Gabe, and I will also put that onto obviously this will be on YouTube within a few minutes, and assuming I don't get sued for using someone else's footage. Although to be fair, so I had taken the footage of the sort of lenses that he'd shot, because that was with some sort of specialized camera at 5,000 frames per second. And those of you who are gamers or who know anything about video, you'll know that kind of for video it's sort of 60 frames a second. For gaming it's more like 200 or something like that. So 5,000 is a crazily fast frame rate for video, and that's how you can capture stuff like that. And by the way, if you want to waste some time, the slow-mo guys is I don't know whether you've watched their videos. They're absolutely brilliant, whether it's paint splattering, cats jumping, or balloons exploding, or the one with the guy being hit in the face with a football works quite well as well. But they're really great to watch in slow motion. Okay, here we go. So pens and paper at the ready. Here we go with the first quiz question. Which term is used to describe the mechanism that allows light to hit the sensor for a given time? I'm expecting a fairly quick response to this one, I must say. Ooh, Gabe is straight in there with choir. Choir is the correct answer. It's the thing we were just talking about. I would like you to reflect briefly. We've got you guys came in, but just after. We'll find out soon that Gabe's actually got some kind of platinum coated internet connection, which gives him everything a few seconds before everyone else, or that you just know your stuff, which is I'm sure what the case is. So yeah, that's the shutter. I'd be interested to see at the end of this course how many of you know an awful lot more about how a camera works, because I've got to say I find it quite interesting. All right, next question. What magnification does a true macro lens have? A macro is the lens for photographing small stuff. What magnification, I'm looking for a ratio, does a true macro lens have? And I'm thinking this could be a fairly fast answer on this one. Or maybe not. Oh, look at that! It's that was fascinating, because that was Adam and Gabe at the same time, but Gabe just got in there first, and the answer is 1-to-1. So what you see is what you get. That's the ratio you'd expect to have, or greater. You can have some macro lenses that have actually, because I'd have accepted any answer bigger than 1-to-1. But when you see these pictures of various insects and bugs and so on, that's the way that it's done. Macro lens is a lot of fun to use. You just 4-2 to Gabe. Okay. Thank you, Miss Brennan. That's where we are. It's 4-2 to Gabe. The pain that you are causing Adam is worth every moment, Gabe. And unfortunately, we haven't got Miss Brennan. No, Miss Brennan is here. Fortunately, we have got Miss Brennan. I need to say, Mr. Chalmers and Mr. Ledbetter send their apologies. They're in school today, so they are not. I think they're stuck in a meeting, which is probably intensely not interesting. So they'd much rather be here because they love to join in. So 1-to-1. Have I got another question? I do. Ooh, what does DSLR stand for? What does DSLR stand for? I'm expecting some very quick answers here. What does DSLR stand for? I'll accept the last 3 words as well. I'll accept the last 3 words. DSLR. I have said it 3 times today. Ooh, digital straight lens. I like your thinking. Nope. No, anyone else? Digital straight lens. Ooh, digital single lens reflex. Adam is straight in there. Digital single lens reflex. That's the posh word they give to professional cameras. Digital single lens reflex. And it's the reflex is that sort of mirror part. So that is good. Sensor light ratio. Some great names coming in here. So that's good. Digital single a DSLR, and of course before they became digital they were just SLRs, but now they're DSLRs. They have been the main cameras for probably the last 40 years, 50 years, and now they're being replaced by mirrorless gradually. So that's what's happening in the world of photography. So that's what DSLR stands for, digital single lens reflex, and that's the end of the quiz. I'm aware that I've been going for 43 minutes, so I need to get a flipping move on because we've all got lives to lead. I'm sorry, guys. Right, patterns and textures. I thought it'd be good fun to think about patterns and textures today, and I know you recognise them, but I wanted to make the assignment this week for you trying to get patterns and textures into your photography. And what I've noticed with you guys is when I cover one of these things, you then start to notice these when you go out. But if you don't go out to look for them, you don't see them. So, stating the absolute obvious, patterns are built, and I'm mainly focusing on patterns here rather than textures. You see, look at Adam. He's even said, well done, Gabe. You are a generous man. Patterns are built on repetition, and they encourage the viewer's eye to roam over the entire image. And what that means is the viewer looks at a patterned image in a slightly different way to an image where you actually draw the eye around by arranging things in a particular way. The more time that a pattern repeats, the greater the sense of pattern. However, beyond a certain number, so when you have many, many, many hundreds, for examples of patterns repeating, it kind of stops being a pattern and starts becoming a texture. All right? And I was thinking about one of the pictures of yours we were looking at earlier was quite textural. It could have been Erin's corn. So yeah, patterns versus texture. And also, if you look at a pattern on a sufficiently large scale, it can also appear to be a texture. So what I'm going to do is give you the 4 types of patterns and then look at examples, and then your job is to recognize these in your photography over the course of the next week. Okay, so the four types of patterns we'll look at. First of all is the many, and that's the sort of massing, the putting together of many of the same sort of object. They might not look exactly the same. You might have a pattern of 100 flamingos, but the flamingos might be in different positions, but you're still repeating the same thing, but they're not identical. And then you've got the next one, which kind of is the identical thing. It's that regular, the ordered rows of things. And then you've got the irregular, where they're grouped together, but in an irregular way. The other key thing is that for these pattern photos to work, they have to extend to the edge of the frame. So you need to frame it so that there's no, so that the pattern appears to go beyond the edge. That's what you need to do. And you've got the option of breaking the pattern, which is adding one element to your pattern, to your photograph of repetition of patterns, which is different. And that will give the image direction. Unlike the rest of them, it will instruct the viewer's eye of how to explore the image. So I don't know how much sense that made to you, but I reckon that this will make a lot more sense, okay? So this is the many. Any stone wall that you care to mention, this is the many pattern. There's a pattern, but it's irregular, but they're all grouped really close together. Notice how it extends beyond the edge of the frame, which makes the viewer think that it goes on for further. All right. If you had stopped that and there was and you'd stopped the pattern before the edge, it would not give that same feeling. So that's many. This is the regular, where you've got the regular pattern repeated over and over and over again, and that's quite effective. We've also got, what else have we got? Oh no, Miss Brennan's laptop has crashed. She can't get back in. Oh, well, never mind. We'll speak to her later. That's the regular one. We've got the irregular one, which is the same thing but repeated in different ways. Sort of the regularity of the strawberries. I love the sheen off the strawberries. What a great shot this is. I don't know who shot it is. It wasn't mine, but I love that. So you've got the irregular patterns, and then you've got the last one, which is the breaking pattern. I can just stop talking there because you all know exactly what I'm talking about. But all of these, notice how all of these, the patterns extended beyond the end of the frame, and that's really important. Okay, so patterns. That is your assignment for next week. Here are the hints and tips. Extend the patterns beyond the edge of the frame. I've said that because it makes the viewers believe that it's going on. Try to find patterns that repeat as many times as possible. This next rule of thumb is slightly ludicrous, but it actually, not that you'll be there counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but once it goes beyond 10, then you get that sense of it being a repeated pattern. One of the ways of best achieving this is to find a pattern and then to take a photo where you're quite zoomed out, take a photo more zoomed in, and then go in further again and get a couple more. And then when you go back and look at them, you'll find that one photo pops, and that's the one that you want to use. So it's a bit of a cheat, but it's a bit like bracketing. You take a few and you find the one that works best. Okay, so those are the hints and tips for your patterns. I've actually managed to catch up. I've still done 48 minutes, so I'm sorry about that, guys. So that's your challenge. Try to find patterns in everyday things. And what I'd like you to do is to try to, the challenge beyond that is to try to incorporate some of the other hints and tricks and tips that you've learnt. Fast shutter speed, low shutter speed, macro photography, anything that we've done, try to throw something else in there as well. Now what I'm going to do next week is move on to aperture, because we've done shutter speed this week. It was quite technical. But once you understand shutter speed and aperture, you understand photography. You'll then need to learn how to. It's a bit like two ends of a seesaw. That if you open the aperture wider to let in more light, you've then got to have a faster shutter speed. So the two work together. The two combine in that sense. Well, there we are. We have come to the end of our time together, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for sticking with us for 49 minutes. That's almost the length of an entire lesson. But I hope it was worth it. And please, please, please keep taking your amazing photos. And I will see you guys in a week's time. And we'll talk about aperture. And I will look forward to it. See you then. Have a great week. And I really hope that you don't get blown away. Is the wind as mad in Crawley as it is in Brighton? It's absolutely nuts here. Good. I'm really glad. The fact that you guys keep coming means that something's going right. And do you know what? It's nice to have an interest with something that you can do during this sort of weird time. Because while there are certain benefits to not being in school each day, it's nice to have something to do, isn't it? All right, guys. I'll leave it there. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week. See you next Monday, 3:00, and I'll send out the link on the Monday. Okay. All right, guys. Bye bye. Take care.